May 20th, 1926. The world was dying, and no one could stop it. Texas had become a vast and sun-baked tomb. The rivers ran dry. The wells coughed up dust. Crops withered like corpses in a field. The land cracked open in jagged, splintered veins, as if the earth itself were crying out in pain. The sky was a lid, hot, heavy, and cruel. And on the edge of that horizon, something was stirring, something monstrous. Jack was only 8 the first time he heard about the storms. His father spoke of them like ancient gods, furious, unforgiving, and unstoppable. He said the air would turn black, and the sky would disappear behind a wall of dust so thick you couldn't see your own hand. That breathing would feel like drowning in dirt, that the storms could stretch for hundreds of miles, rising taller than mountains, swallowing entire towns and never slowing down. Jack didn't believe him. What child could imagine the sky turning against you? But when the storm came, it was worse than anything he'd been told. It began with a strange silence, a stillness so unnatural, even the cicadas fell quiet. Then the horizon darkened, not with rain but with something heavier. The wind picked up, howling low and steady like a warning growl. Jack stepped outside and saw it. A black wall stretching from earth to sky, rumbling forward like an avalanche of ash. The dust storm hit like a war. Their home groaned under the assault. Dust slammed into the windows, slipped through every crack, oozed beneath the door like a living thing. Within minutes, the air was thick and choking. Jack felt it in his lungs, sharp and dry, as if he were breathing in broken glass. His mother grabbed rags, soaked them in their last bit of water, and tied them around their faces. "Breathe slow," she said, voice trembling. "Don't let it in." But it was already too late. The dust covered everything. The floor vanished beneath a rising tide of grit. Their food spoiled almost instantly. Flour turned gray, canned goods crusted with fine silt, water jars filled with floating filth. Days passed, then weeks. There was no light, no warmth, only the sound of coughing and the ever-present scrape of wind dragging claws across the walls. Jack's lips cracked, his eyes burned, his stomach clawed at itself from hunger. They ate what little they could, but the food was filthy, gritty with dirt. Eventually, they had nothing left but silence and cloth masks soaked in muddy water. His father left each morning to work for pennies, hauling stones, digging trenches, anything the town would let him do. He came home each night with a few coins and a half-empty jar of brown water. It was just enough to keep them alive. But they weren't living. His mother withered like the crops. Once kind and warm, her spirit drained away with each passing day. She sat at the window unmoving, staring into the gray nothing. When she died, it wasn't a surprise. Jack had already started pretending she was a ghost days before. She simply stopped breathing. There was no funeral. There wasn't even the strength to cry. Jack's father changed after that. Something inside him snapped. He sat at the table for hours, unmoving, while the wind moaned outside like the voice of a dying god. Jack said nothing. He didn't know what to say. They were both just shadows now. Then one morning the knock came. Town police, hard-faced men in brown coats and wide hats. They said Jack couldn't stay, that a boy couldn't survive alone with a man losing his mind. They came to take him, but his father wouldn't allow it. He screamed, begged, threatened. The officers moved in anyway. In a flash of dust and violence, Jack's father lunged, and a gunshot ripped through the air. Jack's ears rang, his knees buckled, and when the smoke cleared, his father lay bleeding on the wooden floor, mouth open, eyes wide, staring at nothing. Jack didn't scream. He didn't cry. He just stood there, swallowing dust. He was alone now. Jack didn't speak when they took him. The officers didn't say much either, just loaded him into the back of a dust-covered truck, closed the gate, and drove through the colorless remains of what used to be a town. He watched the wind drag scraps of dead crops across the road as they drove away from his home, what little of it still stood. His father's blood was still drying on the floorboards. They took him to an orphanage far from the town. At least that's what they called it, orphanage. To Jack, it looked more like a prison. Inside, it was worse. The air reeked of mildew and unwashed bodies. Flies buzzed lazily over spoiled food in the cafeteria. Beds were bare metal frames with mattresses so thin you could feel the springs gouging your spine. He was assigned a bed, a number, and a task, scrubbing the floors with a stiff, bristled brush and a bucket of brown water. Jack slept in the cold. Each night, he curled up on that rusted frame, trying to pretend he was home again. But the memories were fading. Dust had settled over everything, even his thoughts. He stopped speaking, stopped eating. Even when they forced food into his hands, he only picked at it. It tasted like ash. Sometimes at night, when the wind howled through the broken windows, he could hear the storm again. Not just the sound of wind, but voices in it. His father's calling for him, his mother's whispering his name. He would lie awake, frozen, heart pounding, listening. The wind would whisper secrets, promises, threats, and maybe they were. After a week, he gave up. There was no fight left in him, no hope, nothing. That night, the storm returned, not outside, but in his mind. It swirled through his thoughts, choking them, clouding every memory in grit and shadow. He rose from his bed, barefoot and silent. The hallway was dark, the moon barely piercing the dusty glass. It took no effort. Jack tied the knot the way his father used to when fixing fences. Tight, secure, unbreakable. He climbed onto the footlocker beneath his bed and stood still for a moment, staring at the wall. His breath was calm, his hands were steady. There was no panic, just silence. The world had already ended for him. This was just the dust settling. When they found him in the morning, some cried, some screamed, some said nothing. But the wind didn't stop. It howled through the orphanage like it had through his house, moaning, whispering, watching. And in the distance, on the edge of the horizon, the dust was rising again. The dust was rising again, whispering Jack's name, carrying his story into the unknown. Jack's story carried on the breeze, intertwined with the memories of a life once lived, forever echoing in the dust. And as the sun dipped below the edge of the world, the promise of a new dawn lingered in the air, whispering of hope amid despair. In the echoes of the past, new life began to flourish, reminding those who remained that hope could rise again from the ashes of despair. As the winds of the past faded, a new chapter began for those left behind, filled with the light of friendship and healing. Together, they tended to the garden of their new home, nurturing life where once there was only despair. Each blossom was a reminder that even in the darkest places, beauty could flourish and give hope to the hearts that remained. With each laughter and shared moment, they transformed the orphanage into a haven of warmth, where love began to replace the shadows of the past. In remembrance of Jack, they planted a tree in the garden, a living tribute to a spirit that would forever remain part of their story. As they nurtured the tree, they vowed to carry Jack's spirit with them, ensuring that his story would never be forgotten. With every season that passed, the tree grew strong, a testament to resilience and the bonds of friendship forged in the face of adversity. And as the blossoms filled the air with sweet fragrance, the children knew they had transformed their pain into something magnificent. Each chime rang out like laughter, a reminder that joy could echo through the garden and hearts of those who had once felt so alone. Under the protective branches of their living memorial, they recounted tales of Jack, each story reinforcing the idea that he would always be part of their family. With each stroke of paint, they expressed their dreams and memories, turning the garden into a vibrant tapestry of their collective healing. As they stepped back to admire their work, they felt the strength of their bond and the spirit of Jack living on in every vibrant hue.